like to welcome you all back to the new school year. I know that you can't be here in the classroom right now. You can't be here with us in school. So that is a little bit sad, but I'm glad that you are all safe at home, and we're still going to do our best to have our lessons and still do our best to learn some more English, particularly because this is an English speaking class. I would like you to still be practicing speaking English. I know it has been a while since you've done any English speaking. Some of you did some practice over winter break, but it's a new school year and we want to get used to speaking again. So the first thing that I would like to do is talk to you about an American phrase that we use during this part of the year, the springtime, right? So March, April, and May, right? So the phrase is, spring has sprung, right? In America, we don't usually say it's springtime or happy spring. These are very common phrases maybe in Britain or other parts of England, but America uses the phrase spring has sprung. Now to explain a little bit what that means, the word spring means a season, right? Summer, winter, fall, spring. But it also means one of these. The English word spring also means one of these items here, right? So when we say spring has sprung, we're talking about the flowers springing up, right? Spring has come upon us, it's here now. Spring has sprung. So when we use that phrase, it just means happy springtime, spring is here right now, right? So instead of using any other sort of phrases, I'd like you to practice using the American one, all right? It's very common in America. If you ever visit during the springtime, you'll probably hear people say it. It's sort of a celebration of wintertime being over. So first off, we're just going to talk about a little bit of the schedule for today. Again, we do have to do this online style of class, but we're going to do our best to adapt it. Now because most of you haven't spoken English in a long time, this first lesson is mostly going to be to ease you back into speaking English, the practice of it, right? So an introductory lesson. I'm just going to do a few introductions like I've been doing, some reminders, and some simple practice if you're going to be saying hello and greeting people in English. Next, I'm going to give you a few ways that you can continue to practice speaking English when you're at home. Obviously, you have me as a resource, right? But these are some other ways to practice because I'd really like you guys to still be using your English language, right? It's one thing to read and learn from a book. That's great. But I still want you to practice speaking and listening. Then I'm going to teach you a phrase of the day, right? This phrase is associated mostly with a game, and we will be trying to play that game. But I'm going to teach it to you, you're going to practice, and even though we're on a video medium, so you can't interact with me right away, I would still like you to practice speaking out loud, all right? I will give you pauses. I'll speak and then I'll wait, so that if you're watching the video, you can still interact and speak back. And I'd really like you to try practicing doing it. I know it's a little bit strange, but this whole situation hasn't happened before with coronavirus, right? So we're all trying to adapt. Then we are going to try to play the game. I will teach it to you, and you can play it by yourself, just with practice with me, or once you learn how to do it, you can use the game with your friends, with your family, and you can practice English even more. Right? I will then teach you how that phrase is used in real life, and then we'll close out. We'll say goodbye for now. All right, so first of all, usually when I come into the classroom, I'll say hello, and you'll all say hello back to me. And I'll usually ask you, how are you doing? Right? The most common response I hear is, I'm fine, thank you, and you? Right? So that is what we're used to. Again, how are you is very formal. In America, it's more common if you're speaking with your friends or family members to say, how's it going? Or how you doing? Right? You can already hear, how are you? Sounds very formal. How's it going? More informal. That's probably what you hear if you watch American movies, is American students will say, oh, hey, how's it going? For example, when I used to work at my old job in America, my boss would come to me and he'd say, oh, hello, Sarah, how's it going? Right? He would use the informal. I would use the formal in response. So my boss was allowed to use this informal phrase with me, but I would be more formal speaking back to him. So now we know, even though English, right, we don't have specific formal and informal phrases the way that you do in Korean, there are still different ways of speaking that Americans just grow up knowing, oh, I can use this phrase with my friends, but I couldn't use it with a teacher or with my boss. Now, going a little bit back, right? What can you say other than fine, thank you, and you? Right? I hear you guys say this a lot, and it's not a bad phrase. It's correct. You've learned your English well. However, I do tend to hear students use it a little bit robotic, right? I'll hear you say, I'm fine, thank you, and you, right? Which even though you are using English, I'd like you to be fluent speakers, right? The best speakers that you can be. So just for practice, I would like you to try using other phrases other than I'm fine, thank you, and you, right? Because we want to do as much practice as possible, and this is a very simple way for you to be able to use different kinds of English language with just one question. How are you? Now, here are some other responses, right? If you're doing well that day, you can say, I'm good, thank you. But you could also say, oh, I'm tired today. I'm hungry right now. I'm bored, or I'm stressed. In addition, you can also explain why you feel those ways to practice your English a little bit more. Now, this might sound a little bit scary, but I promise it can be very simple. For example, I could say, how are you today? Oh, I'm tired today because I didn't sleep well. Or I could say, I'm happy because spring has sprung, right? Using that phrase from earlier. Or I could even say, I'm sad because I can't get to see my students right now. So there are many different ways that you can use just the phrase, how are you, right? To practice some more. So for now, I want to ban the phrase, I'm fine, thank you, and you, okay? Ban means I don't want to hear you guys say it. I'd like to hear different versions from you. So if I ask, how are you doing? I would like you to practice using other kinds of English language. Moving on. So, really quickly, some more about American culture. Let's say you're having a bad day and you're in America and someone asks, how are you doing? Now, in America, you wouldn't say, oh, I'm not doing well, or it's a bad day. Because Americans have this idea in our culture where even if things aren't going well, you don't want to tell other people. Not because it's private, but because you don't want to spread your bad luck or your bad mood around to other people. It's called American attitude or American professionalism. So if someone asks you, how's it going? You would just say, oh, it's going. Which means that it's not a good day, but you're still trying your best, right? You're going to get through it and it will be okay. It's almost like if you think about how we are trying to do our best not to spread the coronavirus, right? We have precautions. You're staying at home, you're washing your hands, you wear masks if you go outside. The same way, Americans don't like spreading around a bad attitude. And if you say, oh, I'm having a bad day, then you might affect other people by telling them you're having a bad day. So instead, it's more positive and very American to say, well, it's going, but I'm going to get through it. I'm going to do better and I'll be okay. All right? So I'm going to try to teach you a little bit more about American culture, right? We're learning English and you're learning it from your book and from reading and writing, but it will also be important for you to learn the things that Americans actually say, right? So that if you ever visit America or if you make American friends and are speaking to them, you'll have learned more of the conversational English, which is different from written English. We're going to move on right now to another very common question, just to remind you guys, get you back used to speaking. Right, so what's the weather like today? We have different options. Just from looking out the window, I can see today, right now, it's bright out, it's sunny, I don't see any clouds, and it's not rainy or stormy, right? So it is important to, if you're living where I live in America, there's a difference between the phrase rainy and stormy, as you can see from these pictures. Obviously today is a bright sunny day. We don't need to worry about it. But if you are in America and someone asks, is it raining or storming? Rain just means, right, there's water falling from the sky. But where I live in America, it is very common during storms for lightning to touch the ground. I know it sounds like something that only happens in movies, but where I live, I've seen several times lightning come down from the sky and hit the road outside my house. So if it's just rainy in America, many people still go outside with umbrellas. But if it's stormy, people tend to be a little bit more nervous and careful because power outages can happen and the water main could break, so it's a little bit more dangerous weather if it's stormy, at least where I live. weather for a little bit more, a quick reminder, Americans use Fahrenheit, not Celsius. So if I ask you what is the weather like today, and I ask for the temperature, right? Americans use it in Fahrenheit. So today it is about 54 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Now in Celsius, 54 degrees, we'd all be burning, right? It would be very hot out. But Americans are stubborn people, so even though most of the world uses Celsius, if you're in America, all the temperature will be in Fahrenheit. And you will see degrees up to 70 or even 80 or 90 degrees, right? So it will still get hot, but it's a different system of measurement. That's just a little something to keep in mind so that if you do visit and you ask, what's the temperature? And someone says, oh, it's 85 degrees, right? You'll know a little bit more about what that means. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about before I teach you the phrase of the day